In the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about different ways to make a fine and flexible felt. So if you can remember, we started by using only merino wool. In the next sample, we worked with merino wool mixed with viscose fiber. And today I want to make a sample that is going to be useful to compare with the one we did last week. So the one with viscose. And what I'm going to do is I'll be using the same template, which is a 30 by 30. And I'm going to use 4 grams of merino wool, just like in the case of this one, where we worked with viscose, plus a piece of chiffon silk. Okay, so we're going to start by felting the sample. And when it's ready, we'll see how it compares to these two. Okay, so let's start our layout. So here are my 4 grams of merino, and now I have a decision to make. I can opt for a classic layout, like we did in the first sample, or for a chevron layout, as we did in the second one. Now, of course, depending on the layout I choose, I will either get something like this, or I will get something more elastic like this. This time, I think I'm going to go for the classic layout, because I'll also have the chance to see the difference it makes if I use 6 grams or if I use 4, and also test the drapeability of the felt if I'm just using 4 grams plus my silk chiffon. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this into 2 equal bits. You can weigh this if you prefer, or you can just eyeball it. I'm going to just eyeball it. I'm pretty sure that it's more or less the same amount on both hands. And I'm going to do a super fine layout, finer than the one we've done for our very first sample. And I'm going to start finely because I want to make sure that I have enough wool to cover all the surface of my 30 by 30 template. All right, so I will just go on. Notice how I'm pulling the fiber from the very tips of the wool. Okay, and now that I've covered the whole surface, I'm going to use the rest that I still have here to distribute it evenly and cover any little holes or thinner areas. Okay, now I have my first layer, and I'm going to turn this around to lay out my second layer. You don't have to do this, of course. I just prefer laying out horizontally. So just repeat what we've done for the first one. Maintain it thin so that you can guarantee that you have enough wool to cover the whole surface. Now that the layout is finished, I'll place my netting, wet, and add soap. Now I don't want to soak this. I want to have this just wet enough so that the wool also absorbs the soap. Now this is a very fine layout, so you'll have to be particularly careful that your netting doesn't attach to the wool, okay? It happens really fast. So you're not really rubbing, you're just giving it a slight massage so that you make sure that your water and your soap are both absorbed by the fiber. You will need to lift your knitting now and again. Okay, so what you want is to see some foam. You don't want too much soap in your wool, and you also don't want too much water in your wool. So this is what you're looking to achieve. And now the wool is prepared and ready for you to place your fabric, in this case the silk chiffon. So you'll notice that the wool is slightly bigger than the silk chiffon, and the reason is because when you add water and soap, the wool relaxes and it expands. Okay, so it will be, I had cut this in the exact same size as my template. So my wool is slightly bigger than the dimensions of my fabric. But that's not a problem, because when you start felting it, these fibers on the edges will curl up and shrink. Okay, so now with your fabric nicely stretched and laying on the wool, you can start felting. Now I recommend you use gentle methods, because it's a very fine layout and because we're working with fabric and we want to make sure that the fabric attaches to the wool. And so you can do some rubbing. You can also use your sander, which is a very good solution for this type of felts. So of course this is Nuno felts. I haven't mentioned it, but in case you don't know, when you work with fabric on your wool, it is called Nuno felts. Nuno is the Japanese word for fabric. And when this starts becoming a little bit more felted, I will then roll it up in my bamboo mat and finish it. As you can see, I've gotten quite some shrinkage already, but I'm still far away from my goal, which is to get it down to this size. So now I am going to use my sushi mat to finalize the shrinkage. Now I'm going to fold the sushi mat exactly on the edge of my felt. And I'll just be rolling for some time until I'm happy with how much it shrank. From now on, it'll be pretty fast. With all my samples ready, let's have a look at the differences between them. So we had already looked at the difference between these two. Now let's compare these with the one we've just finished. If you remember, this was super flexible, the one we made with viscose. This was made only with wool, so even though it's flexible and it's fine, as you can see, this one has a lot more drape than this one. Now let's have a look at the one we've made with merino wool and silk chiffon. So I would say it is somewhere between these two in terms of drapeability. So as you can see, it's more drapeable than this one, but not as drapeable as the one made with viscose. Okay, now in terms of elasticity, remember how elastic this one was? This one, of course, is as elastic as the first one because we used the classic layout. Had we done this sample with the chevron layout, like we did the turquoise sample, it would be a lot more elastic. So I really recommend you give it a try and see for yourself what happens if you work with small amounts of wool and if you mix the merino wool with silk and with viscose. So this was a very complete series. We not only spoke about fine and flexible felts, we also spoke about how to mix viscose into our felt and how to Nuno felt actually. Something else we talked about was about different layout methods as well as different fulling methods. If you'd like to have a complete overview of the different fulling methods and layout methods, there are a couple of PDFs to download and you can find the links below this video. I really hope you enjoyed the video series. If it was valuable to you, please share it with your wet felting friends. Thank you for watching and I'll see you soon.